For years, especially prior to Brexit and sometimes after, of course, the 2016 vote, the Conservatives were constantly, constantly on the bandwagon that the real reason we weren't doing well, the real reason why we are not this massive economic superpower, which we were apparently always meant to be, trading around the world, being the best in absolutely everything, was all because of the dastardly, the despicable, deadly EU. It was all the EU. It was all Brussels' fault. It was all those people in Brussels. It was them, not us, because, like I say, Brussels sets things like, regulations and some things on trade, but predominantly the UK government is still vastly a sovereign country when it was in the EU, as is every other, European country. And like I say, if people want to say, oh, but we couldn't set our own, border controls, etc., etc. Have you not seen what Hungary and Italy have done with their, border controls? No, we absolutely could have. So it was just a big lie to distract people, to say, oh, we're not the problem. It's those guys over there. But of course, Brexit's now happened. So any attempt to blame the old enemy looks completely foolish because we're no longer in the EU. So they've got to have a new enemy. And the Tories in particular have set their sights on the civil service. Because as far as they are concerned, it is the civil service who are the new enemy that they now have to ride out and defeat. They are the ones who are, secretly, undermining them. If only the civil service, this woke blob, this wokerati, or the blob as it's as they often dub it, wasn't so against us or wasn't so inefficient or whatever buzzword they like to use today, then, everything would be perfect. Everything would be grand. But of course, as we've said before, they are the ones in charge. They are the ones at the top. They are the ones who lead this. They are the one who the buck stops with. The civil servants take their orders from specifically the ministers, and that is the government, and that is, of course, the elected officials in Parliament, the MPs, the members of Parliament, who are then elected to the cabinet to fill those positions. They are then the boss of that particular civil service department. So here we go. So today we're going to look at Henry Hill. As most of you know, Henry Hill is a big sort of conservative blogger, one of the big people over at Conservative Home. And he has written his 5 plans, or his 5 steps at least, that Rishi Sunak could take to try and fix, and I say fix in in air quotes, the civil service, because I don't think any of these really would sort of fix the civil service. And just before we really get into this, if you were going to sort of, fix the civil service, and let's say I was Prime Minister, here's what I would do. I would go to the head of the civil service and go, look, does the civil service need a complete overhaul to get it up to speed in a 21st century environment? Here you go. Here's all the tools you need. Go do it. Let the civil service reform itself, because it will do the best job it can. It knows what it needs. It knows what it wants. Let them do it, not politicians who are at the moment convinced that the idea and the source of all their problems is the civil service. Because how well do you think that these 5 suggestions are going to work out? So, but before we do go diving into that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, there's the YouTube thank you button down below. And of course, there's the Pony Club as well. So, as always, thank you very much to everyone who does help support the channel, like I say, with the links down below. Or even if you do, just click on the like, share, and subscribe button. So, on with this. So this is Henry Hill's article that he wrote about this. And to be honest, there's no point going through it because the things we want are these. His 5 policies, because everything else is him moaning about the civil service. Oh, the civil service is so bad. There's no point. It's this is what we want. This is his ideas. This is how he intends to fix the civil service. So what is his first idea? So first first idea. If Sunak, let's say if Rishi Sunak won't scrap the ministerial code, he should at least refine it into a realistically enforceable set of serious misdemeanors. This will make ministers less vulnerable to having trivial allegations and wrongdoings dressed up by opportunistic opponents and lazy journalists as a career threatening breach of the code. Um, so first of all, that seems to me might not be how how that how that happens. That seems to be very bizarre, and I think the ministerial code does need more strictly enforcing, and that will be, as I've said before, if Starmer were to do that, say, hey, this is the ministerial code. Oh, yeah, and by the way, this is what we're going to do to make sure that, meat breaches of the ministerial code are more sort of seriously enforced. To me, this is all about, oh, well, lots of our, Tory MPs have broken the ministerial code, but really they're not that bad. Yeah, someone might have been caught lobbying, someone might have been caught doing this, but, oh, it's not a career threatening breach of the code. Look, we saw this when Boris Johnson was beginnings of the Partygate scandal. If you can remember that far back, there were a lot of conservative bloggers that the newspapers were saying, "Oh, this isn't a breach of the code." They're saying, "Oh, it's just a three." They're just being opportunistic journalists. They're being lazy about it. No, to me, that's not about enforcing the sort of the civil service or reforming the civil service. This is just about, I think, Henry Hill trying to uh, be, shall we say, annoyed that his own party won't, well, follow the rules, and being annoyed when they're called up for, well, not following the rules, really. Oh. So, oh, yes, and he talks about, oh, yes, you've got to enforce the civil service code. Because if you haven't heard, civil service, certainly the Home Office, might be going on strike over the Rwanda policy. And they're not going over. Let me be straight. If they were just going on strike over the Rwanda policy, then all these conservatives that are saying that, oh, that the civil service are going on strike, that are bad, because I agree with the civil service code that, as he says here, you must serve the government, whatever its political persuasion, no matter what your own beliefs are. That is, I do much very believe that. That is what allows us to have a good functioning civil service. But the thing is, the reason, particularly, why the Home Office are looking at going on strike, why they are saying is because the Rwanda policy breaks international law, and they are worried about, because here's the thing, it's not Suella Braverman that could face charges or jail time. It's they who put their names on those deportation, uh, documents. It's not Suella Braverman. So they're worried that if they're the ones going to be breaking international law, that's why they want to go on strike, because because this policy is very much a breach of international law. They're like, I could end up going to jail for essentially doing my job, for following the civil service code. That I am might not be a politically a Tory, they might be a Lib Dem, whatever. But if I follow that and you know follow through with your Rwanda policy, I could end up in international criminal courts. because I'm following your policy. So it is entirely right and correct for these civil servants to go and start to raising this and start to say, well, I don't want to go to prison for something that is clearly internationally illegal, which you are saying apparently is not, but everyone else is saying it is. So yeah, the civil servants going on strike, I am absolutely in support of them. It is, if it was the way that the Tories were describing it, at least the right wing saying it, then I would be on their side, but I'm not on their side because, like I say, they seem to ignore the fact that whoever puts their signature on those documents, that's who gets in trouble. That's who could end up in international criminal court. That's who could end up facing sanctions. Not Suella Braverman, not Rishi Sunak, not anyone who initially proposed or voted for this. It will be the civil servants. That's what they're worried about. But anyway, we continue. So this is once again fun because this is meant to be reforming the civil service. But once again, this second one is not about reforming the civil service. So, second, stop constantly reshuffling ministers and reorganizing departments. Give at least those ministers for whom you have an important mission the chance to actually get to grips with the brief. Well, here's the thing. We have had such a series of no-hopers and such disastrous ministers that's all the prime ministers have been left with, because they've been putting in such absolute no-hopers. And then who have they been blaming? They've been blaming their department. Oh, I need to reorganize my department so it works better. Once again, Henry Hill is blaming the wrong people. It's his own party that is the problem. So his third point, and third and relatedly, have some missions. Try to ensure that both that they are having actual being fleshed out with good policy, they have a tally which they are telling the voters and Tory members what your missions are. Once again, that's nothing to do with the civil service. That's his own party. That's his own party. It's his own governmental ministers that are having the problem there. So once again, nothing to do with reforming the civil service. So fourth, bite the bullet and allow larger teams of special advisors, focusing on policy expertise or experience needed to really get to grip with the system or part of it. So here's the thing. If you want special advisors, fine. Have more special advisors. That, I think, should be perfectly fine. If you need someone's expertise on a particular subject or whatever, then yes, fine. Go out, get those advisors, bring them into the team. I've got no problem with that. That's something I've said for a while. So once again, this is nothing to do with reforming the civil service, but there you go. Then, of course, fifth and finally, go big on the Home Office. From policing to Rwanda to Windrush, it is a sprawling department of many failures and few friends, whose staff happen to be threatening to mutiny against one of the government's flagship policies. As we talked about at the beginning, why are they doing this? They are mutinying, according to Henry Hill here, because they are worried that if they follow the government policies, as they are doing, they are serving the government regardless of their political persuasion and what their beliefs are. But the problem comes when they put their names on those documents for the Rwanda's flights and they're deporting them. It's not Suella Braverman who's going to be in trouble. It's going to be them. And remember, we are part of the international criminal court system. So there is nothing for the international criminal courts coming over here and arresting civil servants for essentially doing their job. That is the problem. That is the problem that the Tories cannot see. Instead, they're going, "Oh, they're refusing to enforce our policy." No, what they are worried about is them doing their job and getting arrested for them doing their job, because it is part of their job to follow that policy. They're only doing what they're telling you, and they've gotten to a point where we are like, well, I don't want to go to jail for something which is illegal internationally, which you're telling me is legal to do. Because there's a bit of a disconnect. And then, of course, you've got, Home Office. It's a big department. Everyone knows that. And to be honest, we have not had, I would say, a good minister at the Home Office for years, certainly under the Tories. But it is a big department that covers a lot of things. Um, Windrush, that happened under Theresa May. If you look at going back, there were numerous civil servants warning about what was going to happen, warning about the potential scandal that was going to break, and saying, hey, we need to do something about this. But you had, Theresa May ignoring their advice. And then policing. Yeah. Again, policing at the moment seems to be a massive, massive mess. But that is because of, well, successive Tory Home Office, ministers. So once again, all 5 of these points that Henry Hill has put forward to help reform, like the civil service, aren't even targeting the civil service. They're targeting his own party. The guy knows what the problem is. He just won't say it's his own party that's the problem. And that's why the Conservatives are headed into an absolute mess. And oh boy, it's going to be an absolute mess. It's going to result in civil wars, infighting, you name it. And we can all see it coming a mile away, but it is going to be fun when it happens. And we are waiting for it to happen, I can assure you. But oh boy, will it be fun. And like I say, it's going to also play out in the columns of Conservative Home as well. Absolutely. Because even some of these columnists and bloggers are going to have to take sides. I mean, I can foresee a future where you've got people like, what's our favorite T-boy's name here? Will Atkinson and Henry Hunt on opposite sides going after each other because they're on opposite sides of the Tory Civil War. That would be fun. That would be hilarious to see. But we'll see what happens. But those were 5 of the grand ideas that Henry Hill had to try and reform the civil service, but shockingly did not have any relation to, the civil service, which, as I said at the beginning, this is why you do not want the civil service being reformed by politicians who are essentially have a very strong bias and perceive the civil service to be the new enemy. Because if they reform it once, it's not going to go away. They're going to reform it and say, "Oh, yes, it's all fine." But once again, when everything starts breaking down, who are they going to turn to again? Oh, it's the civil service. We didn't get rid enough of the blob enough. We didn't cut enough of the blob. We didn't shrink it enough. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.